So, welcome to another edition of Into the Abyss. Okay, my name is Kevin Lucia. I'm the author of Things Slip Through a Mirror Darkly, the Clifton Heights series from Crystal Lake. My new book is currently on pre-order from Cemetery Dance, Mystery Road.
I'm C.W. Breyer, the author of Whispers from the Depths, a dark fantasy adventure story, as well as a number of short stories. You can find me online at cwbreyer.com.
And I am Thomas McDonough. I am a history teacher, well-read person, and usually the first read Kevin's books because I have to buy them.
We do want to offer a very quick disclaimer. Again, just thanking everyone who's watching and adding and subscribing. We're really just trying to figure out what we're doing, and we're kind of on our sea legs here. We're in between equipment right now, so I imagine the audio is going to sound a little off because we don't have any mics. And I'm also trying to figure out how to keep my phone from auto-focusing every 20 seconds. So if the video twitches, again, just bear with us because it's been auto-focusing. So tonight we're going to start off with the movie that we all saw in the theater, and that's Dr. Sleep, Stephen King's return to the Overlook, to the Torrance family, and a whole bunch of great shivery goodness. So why don't we begin with C.W. Breyer. What were your thoughts, your take on Dr. Sleep?
I loved it. I thought it was a great compendium to The Shining. I thought it brought a new dynamic. It was a very different story. It was not a sequel per se. It was more of an adventure story compared to The Shining, which is more of a haunted house. My one thing I was not a big fan of is perhaps the editing. I don't know if they cut some stuff. It did feel like it jumped at parts. They jumped to some conclusions in the presentation, in the story. Things like why the characters have to take our plan instead of the simple, let's call 911. They glossed over that a little bit. So that was the only thing I kind of scratched my head over was that, and it felt like perhaps some of that stuff hit the editing floor. But in general, I really liked the movie. I thought it was a great pseudo sequel of sorts. It was a very different story. It was unique in that it wasn't even cat and mouse. It was more like the heroes were really the ones in the powerful position, but trying to hold on to that. It was I don't know if I've ever seen a movie like that.
Okay, Tom, what are your thoughts on Dr. Sleep?
I liked it as well. I thought it was a very good movie. Ewan McGregor is one of my favorite actors. I like that it was kind of a continuation of Danny and how he's dealing with the Shining, as well as dealing with people who are evil, who steal the Shining as well. I mean, first of all, it was dark in some places, and I kind of noticed that that's what some movie studios are doing now with Stephen King. They're keeping the dark things in, and I guess that makes it more realistic. But as CW mentioned, that I like that the protagonists were taking an active role. They just weren't reacting to what the antagonists were doing against them. There were some really good moments concerning going back to the Overlook, confronting, it wasn't even the ghost of his father. I'm sure it was the hotel messing with Danny, but just confronting the past. And I also liked how they brought back the black cook there. Obviously not the actor, he passed away. But, that one person was kind of a stable influence on the main character. So, it was a good movie worth watching. Definitely to go to the theater in.
I would say I would have to agree with both CW and Tom. I absolutely loved the movie. I thought the atmosphere was gorgeous, right down to the musical score, and that repetitive thump, 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 like that heartbeat sound. I love Ewan McGregor, and I thought he did a great job. But I thought the characters who played Rose Hat and Abra just knocked it out of the park. Rose Hat was simply ferocious. It's interesting, and it's kind of sad that it hasn't done as well in the theaters as it. But I think you kind of hit on it a little bit too, CW. It's not necessarily a horror film. There's some horrific things in it. Like, for example, the murder of the boy, the baseball player. That was hard to watch.
That was disturbing.
That was hard to watch. But it's really more like a dark fantasy adventure. Okay. But I think that Mike Flanagan also is the guy behind The Haunting of Hill House, and if you haven't checked that out, you really, really, really should. I think he was faced with a nearly impossible task. Craft a sequel for a movie 30 years later?
Mm-hmm.
And then
A
you've
sequel
got,
to a book and a movie, which are very different.
not only that, you have the miniseries, which I actually have a soft spot for the miniseries. I've always felt that the Kubrick Shining, if there was no novel, Kubrick's Shining is amazing. It's so atmospheric and so tense. But I think it missed a couple of the notes where in the novel Jack is really tortured.
Yeah.
You know, and the miniseries, maybe the production value isn't as high. It's also got that guy from Wings in it, and
Steven Weber.
Steven Weber and Rebecca De Mornay. And the kid is a little bit less than fabulous in that movie. But at least in that movie, they captured Jack being tortured. And so Flanagan had to somehow craft a story that would not only be honorable to that source material, but feel like, you know, a sequel. And I think he did that. And like I said, I know all my Facebook friends, people who I really trust when it comes to horror, they loved it. And I think it's one of those movies that hopefully it will gain a really nice shelf life when it goes to, DVD and streaming.
And I have to say, I also love the cinematography.
Yeah.
Just the
so good.
fog that's in really like half the movie, but just
Yep.
the limited visibility that's in it really added into the theme, added into the story. All the shots of going back to the Overlook, all that stuff was just beautiful.
Yeah.
It was one of the few movies where I've just paid attention to the cinematography and really admired it as I was watching it in the theaters.
So do we have any final thoughts for Dr. Sleep?
Go see it if you haven't. It is rough. Obviously, you're assuming fans of horror, but it's a very different movie. It's unique from The Shining. It's unique from, I would say, pretty much everything I've seen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Different tone, different style, different narrative arc. So definitely see it. I absolutely loved it.
Tom, final thoughts.
Definitely go see it, because I know that you have critics and newspapers who are just coming down on this so much, and then, as Kevin pointed out, with his friends who actually know what's a good movie, saying, no, go see it. That's not a bad idea. Maybe start listening more to friends than instead of the powers to be, and go see what's taking your fancy.
My final note is mild spoiler alert. One thing I was really happy about, have you read Dr. Sleep?
I've not read Dr. Sleep, but I have read The Shining.
So one thing that I was really happy about, spoiler alert for anyone who's not read Dr. Sleep, there was one misstep in the novel. Yeah, I'm daring saying Stephen King misstepped, how crazy of me, but there's one plot point that I feel like he forced. They did not do it in the movie, and how good the movie was proves he didn't need it. In the novel, he forced the connection that Abra was Danny's niece, to explain why she had the Shining. And it was really kind of slippery, where they have this weird, oh, yeah, my dad would get drunk and he probably hooked up with some people when he was blackout drunk and never remembered it. Oh, Abra, your mom taught school at the same place my dad taught school? So they really forced this connection where they had to make it like, it couldn't, which was weird considering the fact that the True Knot was hunting people with The Shining all over the country. So Stephen King had already established that it didn't need to be passed down by lineage.
Did they check her midichlorian count?
Yeah, right.
Oh my God.
So they forced that, but it's funny. Viewers of the movie will notice that Abra decides to give Danny the nickname Uncle Danny.
Yep.
So even that little thing, he's trying to, and I don't know how many people have watched the miniseries. So it's Delicate Dance at the end of The Shining, the movie. Jack Nicholson, spoiler alert, 30-year-old movie. Jack Nicholson, basically freezes to death out there in the topiary maze. Okay, in the novel, young Danny Torrance says to his dad, "It's not real. That's not my real dad. That's just a mask," which is exactly what Abra says to Ewan McGregor, Danny Torrance.
Yep.
And in the miniseries, the father runs, like the house makes the father run down to the boiler, which Danny sets to overload. But in the miniseries, the father forces him to stop and let the house blow up, which is exactly what Ewan McGregor did. So it was interesting the way Flanagan, but if anyone's seen The Haunting of Hill House, this is Flanagan's strength.
Yep.
He can tie all these things together. So our final remark on Doctor Sleep is don't listen to the critics. If this rolls out and it's still in the theater, go see it. If it's out of the theater, go rent it. Go recommend it to all your friends.